Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Cameron coming to you from Green Cove Springs. Sunny day, beautiful blue sky. Got my friend John Moore, doctor of fantasy football, coming from Alabama. Johnny, go ahead and say hello to everybody.
Hello, hello, hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
So today, Johnny and I will be talking about three offensive players and three defensive players that we like, some of their landing spots. Going to throw in a couple sleepers. We're going to do it with some good craft beer beside us.
Hey,
I got my man Walter Payton beside me on the floor because we don't have any shelves in this new room yet. But Johnny, I'm going to go ahead and let you start off. Who's your, let's say your number three guy? Three, the lowest of the ones we're talking about today on offense.
on offense, probably Pat Fryermuth. So I think that this is one of the best value picks that the Steelers got in the draft. I think this guy got overshadowed by Pitts just because Pitts is a freak of nature. But Pat's a complete player, played at Penn State. I think he slid a lot too because Penn State didn't play a lot of games last season. But he's a complete player. He's a great blocker. The Steelers, I think, only have like Ebron in front of them. That's an easy person to beat out for snaps. Big Ben uses his tight ends pretty consistently, and I think that he should compete for snaps just right away. For fantasy, I don't see him getting drafted too high in our draft. He's more of a development guy. I don't think a lot of teams really have the weight for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's probably the lowest of the three. But I think a very, very good value pick for the Steelers in real life.
Yeah, he was somebody I definitely contemplated kind of putting on this list just because of the thin nature of tight end in this draft and kind of what it is in our league. You either got some of these top 6 or 7 guys, and the rest are filtering through the waiver. And now with these two guys coming in, Pitts and then Fryer. I don't even know how to say his name honestly, but
I just call him Pat.
yeah. So I mean, I think he's a good stash if you can afford the pick at some point in the draft.
I mean, with the way that the league is set up right now, we have Nick who has two of the top tight ends. So
Mhm.
the tight end pool is kind of like even slimmer than that. Whenever you think about the stars, they're kind of all brought together in just a few teams. So he's a good investment pick, but I think a lot of people aren't going to do it. He'll be a waiver wire fine probably next season or
Yeah,
more.
yeah, I definitely think he's somebody to keep an eye on moving forward. I personally don't have the draft capital to be able to, roster him during the draft.
The way
Um,
I see it too with the Steelers is like Big Ben's probably going to be heading out, and then Juju only signed a 1 year deal, so he's going to be on the market again. And then basically you're kind of starting over from there, right? You're losing some weapons. You have Najee, you have Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I think he's just a product of Big Ben not being able to throw down as far as he used to. Um, so, I mean, he has a chance to develop kind of quickly. This year, though, I think even if he does take over the tight end role, he's probably going to be like fourth or fifth on the priority in terms of
yeah,
targets, which is all those receivers. And I mean, I think we haven't seen Claypool at his best either. That dude's a monster.
yeah, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty with what they're going to be without Big Ben there in the locker room. For me, my lowest guy, and it's probably going to be surprising. Um, we've talked about him before, is Travis Etienne. I think it's an interesting situation coming into Jacksonville uh, with someone like James Robinson, who had 1,400 all-purpose yards as an undrafted free agency. And I'm not sure if Urban and his team took him because he fell all the way to 25. But I think it'll be an interesting situation with what they do with that backfield and some of their offensive weapons. What they might develop in the next few years. behind Trevor, Etienne, James Robinson, Chark, Chenault, some of these younger guys as their foundation. I think it'll be interesting to watch. I don't think Travis is going to come in early on this year and just boom, put up crazy numbers. Like Josh Jacobs maybe did his first season. I think he may be somebody that they can, work behind and develop because they don't have to worry about paying him and James Robinson. So I think that's an interesting situation. And this is something that Brendan always likes to say is the dude set records while he was at Clemson. He was just overshadowed by Trevor. Trevor had a phenomenal high school collegiate run, and he had a lot of weapons around him that just got overshadowed by his story and his ability to be a playmaker. So I think it's going to be an interesting situation down there. I don't know, again, Etienne being a receiving sort of weapon, because James Robinson, he was one of the top receiving backs as well. So I think Urban said he's going to be like kind of a 3-down back, but we'll see. I think it's an interesting situation to watch. And if you have, you have some of the earlier picks and you're feeling a little ballsy, maybe Dan, feeling a little ballsy, might as well be able to, take that gamble, see what they turn into with that, that backfield.
And with the backfield is interesting because I don't know how truthful this source is, but I did read something on, it was a fantasy football newsletter that we actually talked about before the podcast. It said that Urban Meyer was actually upset that Najee Harris was off the board before Travis. So it looks like they wanted to get a running back there anyway. Do I think that was their biggest need? No. But there's no denying the talent. There's no denying that they want to buy into Trevor heavily.
Yeah.
I thought that Pat Freiermuth, who we just talked about, would have been an excellent choice for the Jaguars.
Yeah.
In the first round, just seeing how far he fell. But I think that, it gives Trevor someone who he's familiar with, which is always great.
Yeah.
But I think for fantasy, this draft is so thin at running back. You have Najee, who I think is the clear number one running back just in terms of the position he landed in. He's going to, pretty much touch the ball all 3 downs. But with Travis, it's like he's the number 2 in terms of talent, but the only reason he's number 2 is because of his landing spot. Because if he was on a team like the Falcons, he would be debatably number 1.
Yeah. He's definitely number 1 talent, just in a team where he landed at the number 2 experience-wise, and just, I think overall skill set. James Robinson is a good running back.
If you're a team like Cody or Nick, and you kind of know that, all right, I'm just taking this team over, I'm not really going to compete this year, he's a guy who you can consider because he's going to only get better as the season goes on. Maybe similar to, I don't know, it's hard to say because I think that James Robinson, I thought he was the real deal.
Yeah.
I thought he came out.
To me, it's a similar situation as what the Colts were last year with someone like Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, a decent backfield. Mack, he had if it wasn't 1,000 yards rushing, it was close to. Nyheim Hines, it was his rookie season, but they had a decent backfield, not something that needed heavy addressing. And Jonathan Taylor comes in, and then Mack, season-ending injury, like game 1. So it's kind of a situation similar to that. They don't need him there in the backfield, but having that 2-headed enemy, I guess, attacking the defense, I think it's definitely something that defenses are going to have to account for. So I think it's an interesting way to approach it. They also drafted Walker Little out of Stanford, and I think they had a couple offensive line signings and re-signings to kind of bolster that offense, and they definitely focused a lot of defense too in the draft as well. So I think they're kind of making some moves, seeing who fits where, seeing what it's going to be like if they can fix that awful secondary and just defense overall. but I'm excited to see what the situation turns out to be in the backfield. That is,
It also is important to note that like it is a whole new coaching regime too, so they aren't necessarily invested in James Robinson.
mhm.
Um, to them, James Robinson could just be an excellent player to have while he's here because I think he can make big money elsewhere if they're not going to pay him.
Yeah,
But
it's a Philip Lindsay situation.
I mean, who
He's down in
knows?
Houston making bigger money than was in Denver, so it's an interesting situation. That's why I put it on the list. I just think it's an interesting situation to follow, and if you have the ability to, hold on to that player, it might be beneficial in the end game.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he's going to go early first in our draft. Just although the number of Jaguar fans are slowly decreasing in the league, Jaguar players are still highly sought after just because it's the hometown team for a lot of people. So
I mean, it's basically turned into the Bold City Tigers, pretty much, which I can't tell you. I mean, I've seen so many Clemson stickers on cars in the past like 8 months, and then probably like even 3 years, just the way it's been progressing. But there have been so many Clemson stickers all over people's cars who have like Jacksonville plates and shit, and it's like, come on, like it's getting to the point where it's kind of like the Florida bandwagon that I think you and I both jumped off of.
oh yeah, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. All right, but moving on, I'll take this next one. My number 2 guy to watch is my man Justin Fields. I wasn't. I'm not. I'm hopeful. I think Nagy does have some, oh God, offensive shiftiness to him. I don't think he's the offensive guru he claims to be that he, learned from Andy Reid. Runs a lot of jet sweeps and a lot of halfback dives up the middle that just don't work, or at least didn't work with Cordell Patterson. And I think a lot of that was based around, what they thought Mitch Trubisky could be and just wasn't. I think Justin Fields is what they wanted Trubisky to be, and then some. To me, he's kind of a Kyler Murray type quarterback, just not as fast, and I don't think as accurate or good. But I think he could fit in that role that Nagy envisions that quarterback position to be, and I think he's tough. When you watch him play against Clemson, he takes some big hits. Maybe sits out a drive or two, and then he's back at it. I'm hoping he breaks the cycle of Ohio State quarterbacks sort of being irrelevant in the NFL, and I think he's got a good chance here. They drafted Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle from, I think, OSU, Oklahoma State, but he's nasty. I've watched some of his highlights. I mean, the guy picks up some of the bigger, faster defensive ends and protects the quarterback, picks up blind sides really quickly. And the overall offensive core, the weapons in Chicago, they're really young. So I think they got a long time to kind of figure it out and really see what works for them. So Fields, I think himself is electric to watch. I think he's falling into a good spot in Chicago between the actual lineup of what's there and the scheme that Nagy wants to run. So I think he's going to be someone to watch. And I think if he's falling, late first, early second, I think if you're in that range and, you're hurting a little bit or just, have a chance to get a quarterback, he might be someone to grab.
Yeah, I think whenever I think of Fields, I just think of persistence and just toughness. Like, dude had to leave Georgia and then found a new life in Ohio State and brought the team pretty well and beat Trevor Lawrence, mind you, on a team that was also stacked. I think he walks into one of the best situations, not the best in my opinion, but Allen Robinson, I think, is a top shelf wide receiver. I'll go ahead and say elite. I wouldn't say it in Jacksonville, but I think he's proven it. You know, going to two different teams and proven,
Agreed.
you know, that both he's high end. Darnell Mooney is someone to keep an eye on. He was a waiver wire find, kind of bounced around to a few teams, ended up on Christian's roster.
I had him. I think, yeah, Christian has him now. You had him too, didn't you?
Yeah, I had him. I think I hopped on someone else's bandwagon instead. Definitely made the wrong call. And well, they have Anthony Miller, but I believe they were trying to move him.
They're trying to move him. They don't have a lot of faith in him. And I mean, you know, to me, Anthony Miller was kind of a dollar store version of Taylor Gabriel. I was really big on Taylor Gabriel, just
Mhm.
as fast as he was, and you know, as good of a wide receiver as he was. I think Anthony Miller's kind of a discount version of that.
Yeah. Well, and basically with Fields though is that he has Andy Dalton in front of him.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think that that's a bad mentor. I think that that's someone who he can easily beat out. I see him probably starting in the second half of the season. But the interesting thing about the Bears is the Bears, God, for the past 2-3 seasons, they're like one of the few teams that's not afraid to just fucking pull a quarterback and start someone new. Like which I think makes it exciting to be a Fields owner because he can go in at any time. I think that the Bears are going to be in a playoff kind of run kind of position. So that adds a little bit more pressure to Fields to perform. But on that note, that means he's on a good team, which, he'll, whenever he does play, he has a better chance of having better outings.
Yeah,
I'm personally a little bullish on him. I think he'll be something.
yeah. I think he's one of those. He's one of those fantasy wise guys. He's not going to start right away. Maybe 5 games in, unless Dalton is just getting hammered, kind of like what Nick Foles was all last season, and getting paid all that money. Unless he's just playing that bad, I think Fields is going to be sitting for a little bit, watching, getting comfortable with the system, getting comfortable with the second guys, getting comfortable, understanding the complexity of what Matt Nagy wants his offense to be. So I think he's going to be good if you got the patience for him. I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes level, where waiting that kind of patience, but I think he's fallen into a decent situation where if he proves himself, that organization can build around it. But that's why I'm big on him. I'm bullish on him. And if I didn't have the 1-1 and I only had the 1-7 that I do have, he's definitely somebody I'd be looking at because of my quarterback situation. So I think that's definitely a person to target in the later first, early second, even maybe mid second if he does fall that far. And I think he even might. So that's why I'm putting him on our list today.
And that's something that I've been saying for a while too. Is I think that quarterbacks are undervalued in this league because a pick like that can net you like 3 to 4 years of security at a minimum,
Mhm.
which means that you won't have to draft a quarterback in that time, and you can focus on other positions.
Exactly.
So he's obvious. Like any team that spends a first round pick on him, he's obviously gonna get playing time. He's gonna get his chance.
Oh yeah.
If he is picked in the second round, it's a steal for whoever gets him, in my opinion.
I think so too. And I think that there are teams in our league that could use quarterbacks, and Cody specifically kind of comes to mind because I know he reached out to me about a quarterback trade, but I think he's got a draft position to where he could pick him up later in those early drafts.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I think that the top 3 picks, Trevor, Najee, and Jamar Chase. The rest, I think, are a slight tier down. Not so much, and the quarterback. The reason I believe it's like that is because, Trey Lance and Justin Fields aren't playing right away.
Mhm.
But like we talked about, if they were, then we would have a lot more of a debate about who 1-1 could be.
Yeah.
But Fields, I see him going. I want to say late first because that's where I think he should go. But if he falls into the second, like I said, that's a steal. It's just a bit of an investment.
That's what I'm saying. If I didn't have the 1-1, I do have 1-7. I'm looking at Fields at that 1-7. I think he's got that potential. Like I said, I think Kyler Murray is his kind of pro comp, but I think Kyler Murray's about that tier one. Justin Fields, I think he's got a little bit of work to even get there, but I think he's definitely somebody worth taking in the late first if you have a need for a quarterback, and you know you're not in the running this year, or you are in the running and you just kind of want to keep that quarterback cycle going on your team. Like, hey, my guys are getting older. I need a refresh. I can wait for this guy to get better, or I'm doing a total rebuild and I can wait for this guy to develop.
Definitely. Well, my next player is Devontae Smith. I had to include him. He's probably my favorite Bama receiver of all time. The dude can flat out play. I've never seen him not succeed when asked in whatever role. Back whenever it was Judy, Ruggs, and Smith, the scouts and even Saban said that Smith had the best hands out of all of them, which I think is just a giant, thing. People want to say that he's, kind of small, kind of slender, but you look at guys like Deshaun Jackson and even like Hollywood Brown, they're doing well, but those guys don't have the skills that Smith has. Smith is such a clean route runner. He can play inside and outside, lightning fast.
Mhm.
Just watch his highlights. Dude's burning. I think the thing is that he's played with 3 NFL quarterbacks up to this point. If you look at his time in Alabama, Hurts, Tua, Mac Jones.
Mhm.
So obviously having a connection with 3 NFL quality quarterbacks, that says something about your skill level as a receiver. And now you're going to go to Philadelphia, as the true number 1, mind
Yeah.
you, with Hurts, who you've already shown an established connection with. I think at that point it's just on Hurts to get him the ball. And I see Devontae Smith going mid first, and as much as I look at it, I see a steal. Like, I understand Chase going before. Yeah. I understand that. I don't think Waddle should go before, and I can see Trevor Lawrence and Najee going before. So I think he should be number 4, honestly.
Really?
But
so you think before Waddle?
I would take him before Waddle. Waddle's coming off an injury, and also Waddle's just a smaller guy. I think he's more of a one-trick pony. I think Smith is a more developed receiver. Whenever I see Devontae Smith, I kind of see almost like Jeremy Maclin with the way his hands are very well, but he's deceptively fast. Mm-hmm. The problem is he's played next to guys like Ruggs and Waddle, who are just slightly faster. If you're we're talking tenths of seconds, so the kid can still move. So yeah, I think he's top shelf. I think he's going to be a great pick. I would say out of all the Bama products to come out of this draft, he's the one who I would bet the most on, and that's including Najee.
So where do you think he's going to fall in our draft specifically?
So like I said before, I think the top 3 are going to be Trevor, Najee, and Chase. I think you look at Drager's team, I think that Drager can use a little bit of everything except for tight end. So I think Pitts is off the board. So I see Drager pulling the trigger on a running back. Honestly, just he could use a little bit of everything, but I think with how thin the draft is at running back, you pull the trigger on Travis, because you're not going to get a running back later. And then I think Cody, I think once one running back goes, the other one has to go because there's the big 3. There's Najee, Travis, and Williams. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it. The other ones are going to be maybe a committee role at best. And you don't want to bank on that.
Yeah.
Then I think, Williams will probably go. And then from 6 on, I think Smith should be the next person, unless the team wants to take a chance on Kyle Pitts. But basically what I'm trying to say is I think the running backs are going to go really, really early just because they're so thin. So that'll probably
That-
put
that-
later first.
That's an interesting take, I think, is that running backs are going to go early because they're so thin. To me, it felt like running backs are kind of thin, so people were going to go running back or wide receiver heavy because it's a thinner class. I mean, Chuba Hubbard, he was he was a talk of the town last year after he decided to go back to school. So in my opinion, I think it's going to be Najee's going to go, and then it's going to be wide receivers pretty much, the rest of the way. Because I think if Nick can get Devontae Smith, he's going to take him. And I know if he falls to 1.5, Cody's going to take him. I mean, it would be silly, in my opinion, to not take him at that point.
I think the biggest variable in my theory is Nick, because I have no idea what Nick needs, because it's honestly everything. Like, he could be justified taking a quarterback for the
Mhm.
it's whatever he wants to do. But yeah, I think that the part that I'm going to stick to in that is that once the second running back goes, Williams or Etienne will be the next selection, because after that you're looking at Trey Sermon and Michael Carter, who are timeshares at best.
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment. Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think more of our league is going to be wide receiver hungry, in my opinion.
And I think that Devontae Smith should be the second selected. I'm glad that I'm not stuck at 2 or 3, because I would want to pick Smith, but I think that Chase is probably the safer bet.
For sure. I mean, Chase and Burrow are just going to have that connection, and Burrow's going to have to keep slinging that thing like he was doing 60 times a game last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. 61 times, they let them just throw, and they're not a very good team.
Yeah.
So they're playing down from a lot. So they're going
And that's
really.
That's kind of what I'm thinking Jacksonville is going to be like, and I hope, I never want anybody to get hurt at that level, because when those injuries happen, they're bad. But I think Trevor's going to be slinging that thing, because they're going to be playing from behind. They made some free agency signings, but it's not going to be enough to really keep the offense off. They're not going to stop offenses. And the Jags are going to be playing from behind. So, I mean, I think you're bringing these 1-1 quarterbacks in. They're slinging the ball 40 to 60 times a game, trying to come back. And then they're running for their lives. And then, their knee is backwards. So, kind of a tangent from what we were talking about, but that's just, I think, Chase is going to be getting the ball thrown to him a lot because he has that rapport with Burrow, but I think it's a recipe that some of these teams are setting up for disaster. It's a recipe for disaster in the long run.
We'll see.
But we'll see.
I for the first time since I've really truly hated the Jaguars, I can say that I'm actually excited to watch a prospect of theirs in Trevor. I want him to do well. I truly do, because I didn't like watching him in college because of what he did most of the time. Well, I think it ended up being close to a 50-50 split, but I mean, the kid can play, he seems to be a pretty clean cut guy. I like players like that. I don't like guys that come in all cocky and shit.
Yeah.
So I want him to do well. But I don't think that they're necessarily. I really just have a problem with the Etienne pick, to be honest. I would have liked to see them draft a guard or a tackle, quarter line combo. You already have a running back that's been established, and I mean, you tried in free agency. You got Marvin Jones, you didn't get.
They definitely had needs they could have addressed more heavily than Etienne. I mean, I think it's kind of that, like we said earlier, that comfort factor,
I mean, they might have the offensive line figured out. I don't watch the Jags or follow them very much, but I think Trevor is going to be great.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that he's probably going to be one of those guys that's more of a victim of the team he's on, more so than his talent. Um, it's up to the Jaguars to establish a winning culture, which is something that I've never seen Jacksonville do. Seen them maybe put together like a season and then it kind of goes bad.
Well, once they bring in Tebow, we'll be good to go. The two leadership roles filled like that with a tight end and quarterback just leading a prayer every single down. I mean, how could you lose?
And he can help people repair their homes. I think he had a show on HGTV. Just
Oh God,
do it all American.
good for them. Good on them. And I know Tebow wrote a children's book I was going to buy for my nieces, but I think it was like $15 on it. It's not worth it. They can't even read yet. Why'd I buy it? All right. We'll go ahead and move on to our top offensive picks. I know we've talked about him before. I've been big on him for a while, and I know if he falls to me, I'm definitely going to take him, and that's Rondale Moore going to Arizona. I'm huge on Mr. Moore. I mean, my best friend's name, Moore. So I feel like, that's just a name of winners. He's fast as all get out.
I like that pick. That's an interesting one.
I've been big on Rondale Moore. I remember watching him back in, 2018 and putting up like 300 yards against Ohio State. That was a good team in 2018. I get why it might be surprising to have him this high up to some people because he hasn't really put together a season like that after. He's had some injuries, quarterback play at Purdue. You're not going to have another Drew Brees, that comes out of a school like that, at least in the last 2 years. But I mean, the situation he's going into, damn, the dude's going to fit right in. Arizona, it's like speed kills. You got Kyler Murray, probably the fastest quarterback in the league. I think that's safe to say.
I would say so.
Yeah, and
Lamar, but Kyler seems a little quicker.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you got him, Christian Kirk, fast as all get out. DeAndre Hopkins, not known for his speed, but I mean, you look at the wide receiving core, where 3 is kind of locked up by Christian Kirk, and I mean, I feel like he could be easily overshadowed by someone like Rondale Moore if they ever, they start doing the jet sweep. That's Rondale Moore. He led wide receivers in 2018 with broken tackles after the catch with 33. But again, he's a gamble because he hasn't put up a season like that since 2018. I think he's going into a situation where, I mean, damn, he could really go in and be that number 2 guy pretty quickly. AJ Green, I know they just signed him, but he's old. DeAndre Hopkins, he's 28, about to be 29. He's going to be the best receiver probably this year, next year, but then, it's going to start fading out. He could really be that, Tyreek Cohen kind of guy, that speed demon, that one that's just, it's not a jet sweep. It's just a post route, and he's going to outrun everybody on the field. He ran a 4.29. I know everybody was running under 4.5 this year because it wasn't like a unofficial combine. To me, 4.29, unofficial or not, that's fast as hell. Yeah. So I think he's landing in a good spot with that high-powered offense that just signed James Conner. I mean, I think he's going to fit right in and have a better fantasy season than a lot of people are going to kind of give him credit for.
That's an interesting pick. I like that one. I'm, can't say that I've watched too much of them, but I do like the landing spot. I do think that AJ Green is like downhill. I see Rondale Moore kind of taking over that role, probably mid-season by the bye week. Mm-hmm. Christian Kirk lives on the IR, And I mean, he's proven himself to be worthy of a roster spot, not much else. And I mean, D Hop is D Hop. You
Yeah.
know, you enjoy that while you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 more years of, I mean, the best. And, Arizona's good about keeping those wide receivers that, catch the ball and get touchdowns. So, I mean, to me, he fits in to that speed kill scheme. Even Dan Arnold, who is on like Carolina or something now. I mean, even he caught the ball towards the end of the season. Like everybody's getting a touch there. I have Chase Edmonds, everybody's getting a touch there. So, especially at wide receiver, you don't have to worry about, I mean, Kyler stealing end zone touches like at that position. They're either going to catch it for a 40-yard touchdown or they're just going to get 10 receptions for 80 yards and still put up points that way. Because, I mean, Arizona's just that kind of high-powered offense. It's quick, it's fast, and they need Rondale Moore to keep that speed going.
Yeah, whenever I saw that pick, it kind of had flashbacks of Andy Isabella, that pick. And I think Dan, who will probably listen to this, can remember falling in love with the idea of speed in that Arizona offense.
Mhm.
But I think that Rondale Moore is a much more developed receiver than Isabella was, and probably just as fast. So, that combination is going to be lethal. Um, they're one of the few teams to use 4 wide receiver sets quite a bit. So I think a large part of that is because Kyler is a threat running the ball, so they don't necessarily have to have a running back out there all the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's an interesting pick. But do you see him above like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle? And how?
I don't see him above that. To me, it's obvious. All right, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Waddle, like these top guys, wide receiver guys. Like, yeah, everybody knows that these are going to be the top guys. This to me is the best fit for this player, and I think he's going to go in and make an impact very quickly. And I think it's going to be a long-term kind of thing. Like, I think he's going to be solidified as a cornerstone to what this offense wants to be and can be. But I don't think he's a better receiver. Like, no, if I'm looking for a receiver, I'm taking Chase. But I just personally, I'm excited to see these 3 guys I'm talking about play and like where they're landing and either what they're going to bring to them, like the teams that they're playing at, or what the team is going to do with them, like Travis.
Yeah.
So that's why I got these guys as my top 3. More so excitement of what they're going to do at the team level, and then or I want to see how the situation plays out.
So my number one player that I'm excited for is actually Trey Lance, quarterback for the 49ers. Shanny did all the smoke and mirrors to make sure they got this guy. They were, seen at Mac Jones, his pro day, and then traded up. I think they knew they wanted Trey Lance after watching Mac Jones, and he just wanted to throw up more smoke and mirrors. But they aggressively traded up to get this guy. He is young. I think he's like 20 right now. The biggest critiques on him are his throwing motion and basically just lack of experience. I mean, he hasn't played much, but whenever he has played, he's on that Trevor Lawrence streak. He's undefeated.
Mhm.
So Shanahan has said that he's young enough that he thinks he can correct his throwing motion. I don't think he's going to play this year. I do think they go the whole season with Jimmy G unless an injury happens, which is highly likely given Jimmy G.
Yeah, true.
But the 49ers are a fucking stacked team. Not only are they stacked on defense, they have some skill players that are very, very lethal. Let's go ahead and talk about Kittle. Fucking monster. He's an extremely big bounce back dude this year because he was hurt all last year.
Mhm.
On top of that, Deebo Samuel, and then Brandon Ayuk, who quietly cracked everyone's top 5 rookie receivers last year. And then, running backs, you draft Trey Sermon, You have Raheem Mozart, a few other guys like Jeff Wilson Jr. You can kind of just get the job done.
Mhm.
Shanahan wants to completely revitalize this offense, make it more of a mobile type of thing. This is going to fit great for Trey. I think that the critiques, based off limited exposure, that's not his fault. He did what he had to do whenever he was given the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think he's a really big investment, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think it's a Mahomes type investment. I think that whoever gets him is not only going to get a great quarterback, they're going to get a great mobile quarterback, which in terms of fantasy adds about another 5 points at any given week, guaranteed. And that's not also to say, you look at the 49ers, how they run the ball, they play the hot hand. So down by the goal line, he can just keep it himself and run it just as easy. Like this dude's going to be a monster in fantasy, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big guy too, isn't he, at a quarterback position?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to say Cam Newton size because I'm not sure about the direct comparison, but whenever I see him play, I see a Cam Newton type of build.
Yeah, he's
But
pretty
I honestly,
long. Yeah,
he's cool.
I think that's I remember hearing you talk about him too. Playing zombies and shit. Just he is falling into a good situation, and that's kind of that young team. That's going to be something that's interesting to watch. Like with Justin Fields and what the Bears are doing. Like these young guys, Dave Montgomery, like 23, Cole Kmet, 22. These young offensive weapons that they don't have to spend a lot of money on right now that they could build around, moving forward. And I think that's um, a good assessment to have kind of in your number one spot as far as landing spots. I think that's pretty good.
It's just a gamble. I mean, and the team is amazing. The 49ers are a very, very good team.
Mhm.
I believe in Shanahan too, being a Falcons fan. He blew the Super Bowl for us, but everything up till then was great. So I do think that he knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants. And that aggressive approach that they took to, reach up the draft board to
Mhm.
really make sure that they got this guy.
Yeah.
I think just it shows a lot to me. Between him and Fields are my top two in terms of landing spots. I would have put Denver up in that category too, but Denver did not go quarterback. And with Trevor and Zach Wilson going to kind of lesser teams, in my opinion, I still like their talent, but with their situations, I think Trey Lance and Justin Fields excite me a bit more than the others. But I can see the excitement for both.
It's kind of like the Justin Herbert. Nobody thought he was going to start week one or week two when he did. But when he stepped in, he had all those weapons, and I mean, he's a top 5 dynasty quarterback now.
Yeah.
Just because he fell into that situation. Just because, dang, Tyrod Taylor got his lung punctured by the team doctor. So, I mean, I think you're right in that assessment.
And that's what's kind of changed as I've done this league for longer and longer is like landing spots really can make or break these players because there are guys that I could tell you about that I've like scouted for the longest times and like in the NFL they just burn out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you would have told me at the time I would not have believed you, but it's their landing spots and what happens. But that's unfortunately what I think might happen with Zach Wilson. And with Trevor, who knows? We'll see if he truly is a generational talent because I do think it takes a generational talent to turn around that team. I think an average quarterback will just produce a team not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
All right, so moving on to defense, I will go ahead and start this one out. I know I've talked about this guy before, but he's number 3 on my list. Jeremiah Owusu Koramoah.
I've heard him referred to as JOK.
Yeah, JOK Koramoah. I mean, that's what it is. I have it spelt out on my phone different times just because I've been watching him for so long. but it doesn't matter how many times I spell it out. I could write it out 100 times. I'll never be able to spell it. I think he's number 3 on my defensive list. I think it was kind of a drier, like fantasy defensive draft this year, a little bit in my opinion.
That's fair.
You have the Chase Youngs that are there, the Bosa's, the Watt guys that are always there. I think it's a little bit drier. I think a lot of teams were kind of looking at those offensive players and not even the skill players, you know, the offensive guard, the guards, the centers, the tackles. I mean, they're looking at those players, but I think as dry as this like defensive position was, fantasy wise, you know, I think Jeremiah JOK. I think he's small for a linebacker, but I think he can cover wide receivers, those fast wide receivers in the NFL, and stay on the field. You know, and I think that's going to put points on the board for whoever has him. As if he's not getting pulled out, you know, if they're doing 4 wide sets, you know, if they're going to keep him on the field to cover somebody, I think that's just more of an opportunity for him to get more points on the field, whether it's passes defense, assisted tackles, you know, interceptions. You don't want a linebacker, in my opinion, like Danny Trevathan for the Bears, who gets pulled off the field when they have 4 wideouts for the sake of having another safety or something. You know, somebody who can cover that extra wide receiver. You want somebody on the field like JOK who's going to stay on the field for more snaps, because more snaps equals more points. And I think that's going to be a good spot in Cleveland for him to do that. I think he's just going to be on the field more as a linebacker and be covering more wide receivers. And he's just good at sniffing out the run and, you know, fighting through tackles to be able to actually get to the ball. So I think he's going to be a technical linebacker covering, and I think he does have the speed and know-how to actually get to the ball if he's, you know, spying the quarterback or whoever it may be, you know, if he's covering the running back. I think he's going to be that guy who's just going to put up consistent points just because of time on the field, because he has that ability to cover receivers when needed.
Yeah, that's a big part. That actually played a lot into my rankings too, was trying to find these guys that I think are actually going to get 3 down rolls. You know, that's a huge part of our league. I personally haven't seen much of him play. I know during the Bama game, he stood out to me as one of the few capable players on that team. But, you know, good landing spot with Cleveland. I don't think that they have a true linebacker, you know, kind of leader. He went second, third round.
I think second round, 15 or so pick in the second round, something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, a clear investment in him. I think that's a good pick too, just for Cleveland in terms of their need. For my player, I actually picked Zaven Collins from Tulsa. Got to rep the American Conference. So the reason that I actually picked this guy was, one, just watching him butt fuck USF like for years, but also he kind of, I think, can fill that role that Hassan Reddick had in terms of getting off and playing defensive end. I think he is kind of like that Chandler Jones type of player. He's very, very big, also extremely athletic. I want to say a 4.5 40. Which is still very quick for a linebacker. He was known to play in coverage. You know, he was covering some UFC or UCF receivers, which a lot of them have turned into NFL guys. I do think a large part of why he's on my list is I think he's going to get the defensive end tag and the linebacker tag. Those players are very valuable because you can put them in a line spot. That's why I think he's going to do that. I also think that Arizona as a whole, like I said, Reddick, they have that hole to fill. I think that's why he's there. But also Jordan Hicks is apparently coming on to a contract year, if not already in one. So there's a presence in the middle that also needs to be filled too. And their defense is kind of weird in the sense that they have like Isaiah Simmons,
Yeah.
Play that linebacker safety role. Zaven Collins, who can play the defensive end linebacker role and is even known for his coverage skills. So like they're going to play guys everywhere. And
Yeah.
I think he just fits the mold. Honestly, I think,
And you
he's
got somebody like Chandler Jones too, who falls back into that linebacker position too.
yeah, like they're it's a really good athlete. He really flew up the boards towards the end there. I think being in the American Conference hurt him. But the American Conference can put out some very good defensive players. I think that he is one of the few that will be a very solid player. I don't necessarily see him putting up huge points right away, but he's a guy to keep an eye on, later in the season and
Yeah.
especially next. Because
Yeah, I think it's one of those fantasy drafts where defensively, a lot of them are going to fall way later, the fourth and the fifth round. I don't think there are a whole lot of big standouts to really take that gamble on early on, like a linebacker in the early third, kind of like Murray, Patrick Queen, Simmons, who was starting to come out last year. I don't really see that being defensively what this draft is going to be. I think there are going to be a lot of waiver finds that you're going to have to find after the season sort of starts.
and that's the fun part about the big IDP stuff that we do is because Jeremy Chin, I think is pretty much the undisputed number one,
Yeah.
defender, waiver wire guy.
Mhm.
But with Zaven Collins, also just particularly with him, Arizona didn't really use Isaiah Simmons very much, and they spent a very high draft pick on him. So I think that's also going to play a role into Zaven in the sense that they're not afraid to hold you back and develop you until they know you're absolutely ready.
Yeah, and I've heard some fantasy podcasters talk about that. There are a lot or a decent amount of teams that will kind of do that shotgun sort of development with some of these young guys coming in. It's like, I want you to do run coverage, pick up the slot receiver, or be able to slide into coverage. Just doing that shotgun sort of blast of responsibility when they should be doing, hey, I want you to focus on spying the quarterback or stopping the run. Focus on keeping the B gap stuffed. Don't let them come outside, which is what they should be doing with these young defensive players. And I think Arizona does have that sort of recipe to sit there with people like Simmons. Hey, this is what I want you to focus on when you get this down, this one big need we filled, this one big hole we need filled, then we'll move on to other things. But you need to focus on this. So I think, that's a good recipe for a strong defensive core.
That's fair.
So for my number two, I think he's actually going to be a waiver pickup later on. It's Divine Diablo, safety, Las Vegas Raiders. I think he was taken like 80th overall, maybe, but he had 55 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 8 passes defended in his 2 years at Virginia Tech. Sorry. He's big. He's bigger than JOK. He's 6'3", 226 pounds, and he runs a 4.45 40. And what I've heard some analysis say is he's a tight end eraser. He's a strong safety is what he's been playing. And when you line him up with a tight end, he's 6'3", 226 pounds. The dude's a monster at that size, and he's fast. He's going to be able to play cover 3 well. He's going to be able to slide up on a blitz. He's going to be able to spy. One thing when I was watching some of his highlight tapes is the dude gets past the line of scrimmage so fast and behind to stop the run. It's almost blinding. And he's one of those ball shark tacklers where he just finds and punches that ball quick. So I think he's going to be one of those waiver pickups, kind of like that Jeremy Chin positions. But I'm excited to see what he's going to do with that week Raiders secondary, and because I think he's filling a hole that they needed filled very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I actually can't say that I know him too well. I'll have to look him up. I don't really have too much to add about him.
Ryan Diablo. I would say he's a. I mean, his highlight reel is good. He looks like he's going to be a good, hard hitting, strong safety, almost kind of like Reggie Nelson, who ended up kind of becoming irrelevant.
He had a very long career though, so
yeah. So I think look him up. I think he's going to be somebody to find on the waiver wire. I wouldn't spend a draft pick on him. I mean, maybe in the 5th round though, but
yeah.
he's still going to have an impact on the team.
I think so. My number 2 is going to be Richie Grant, safety for the Falcons. So the Falcons as a whole, we dropped all of our safeties. I'm talking Keanu Neal, Ricardo Allen, DeMonte Casey. They're all gone. So we signed 2 safeties in the offseason since Eric Harris, and I think it's like Harmon or Herman, whatever. They're both primarily free safeties. So with the second pick, we draft Richie Grant out of UCF. The whole theme of the Falcons draft was versatility, and that's kind of what Richie brings.
Mm-hmm.
He can play free or strong. I think we drafted him to be strong, just because he is a little bit slower maybe than what would get him a first round grade, but he's still very quick. He's got the 4.4, 4.5 time.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting is that Pro Football Focus, who do all the advanced analytics, they didn't have him as a top 8 coming into the season of college football, but then he ended up on number 2 on their boards. He's known most for his run stopping, which safeties who play the run typically get more points than those who don't, just by virtue of tackles, all that. But one thing that I thought that was particularly interesting about Richie Grant is that he has 10 career interceptions, which for a safety that primarily plays run, that's kind of high.
Yeah.
He plays a lot on tight ends. He can also cover the slot receivers very well, plays the top well. And a lot of his highlights, they're not just great plays. They're coming on clutch situations, 3rd and longs in the 4th quarter, 4th down conversions, overtime. This guy, he's constantly made plays. If you ever watched, a UCF game, he was always a player to watch type of dude. With our new defensive coordinator, he was there in Baltimore for the likes of Ed Reed. He was in Tennessee more recently with Kenny Vaccaro, Kevin Beard, and stuff like that. Has a good pedigree of strong safeties. He likes to blitz a lot. He's known for sending the safeties in. So I think that if a safety is to blitz, it's more likely going to be Richie Grant. I just see him being all over the field for the Falcons. Yeah. I see him being a pretty large contributor right away. And there's a lot of tackles to go around in the secondary. So I don't see him being a high draft pick in our draft. I think a team that's safety needy could probably get a value pick in the 4th, 5th round with this guy.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of the defenses are going to. There's a lot of versatility. They don't want these one-trick ponies. They want guys who can spy the run, or those ones that can cover the tight ends. So yeah, I think those guys are highly valuable in real world situations and in fantasy, because they're going to be on the field more if they can fill those needs across different schemes.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I feel like with a linebacker, it's you have to be able to play the pass to be a 3-down, backer. Mm-hmm. But for the safety, it's almost kind of opposite. You have to be able to play the run to be a 3-down safety. Yeah. So these are guys that I think, fill those roles. And I think, like you said, versatility it's almost becoming a requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as the game is changing, I mean, the defensive coordinators are asking so much of these defensive players that, I mean, you have to be able to do a little bit of everything.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so moving on to the number 1 defense. For the longest time, I thought it was going to be JOK was my number 1 guy. But I think, honestly, just because of his size at the linebacker position, that's why he fell back further for me. But Micah Parsons, for the Dallas Cowboys. He took my number one spot. To me, he's able to sniff out the run so quick and so effectively that in this offensive era where they're having multiple running back committee, you have to be able to sniff out the run quickly and effectively, and he does that. And he's big. I mean, he's 6'3", he's 240, and he's kind of built like that traditional linebacker, shorts or wide-shouldered, muscular guy, kind of like a Urlacher type person that's just big, wide, and fast. And he's that kind of guy. So he also creates fumbles. And if you're going to play the run in a IDP fantasy, you have to be able to create fumbles. And I think he can do that at that position. And I think eventually he could be one of those like Leonard Floyd, Khalil Mack type players where he's playing DN or linebacker, has a dual designation. So I think he adds value in that, being able to play both of those positions, filling a defensive line position. He had 99 solo tackles for 2 seasons at Penn State, 6.5 sacks. So, I mean, 99 solo tackles at Penn State in the Big Ten, where you got a couple contenders. I think that's, a pretty solid baseline coming into the pros. And some of those sacks came against Justin Fields. So when you're stopping a quarterback who can run like that and get away from the defense, when some of those tackles and sacks come against him, I think that provides a lot of value coming into the NFL of today.
Definitely, and I think a large thing that helps him is the Cowboys didn't pick up Leighton Vander Esch's fifth-year option.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think he still was like a first-round pick, so there was really no debate. They wanted him, but yeah, Cowboy linebackers are amazing. Ask Brendan about Jalen Smith, and I mean, I had Leighton for a while too. Yeah, I mean, just a absolute freak athlete. I want to say he was a 4.2 40 unofficial, something crazy like that. So super fast. Yeah, he's a beast. I think that right away though, he's not going to get an immediate role because there's Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch are still there.
Yeah, I think he has that time to develop, and I think they're going to be able to find out exactly where they want to fit him in, because I really do think he can be that defensive end, outside linebacker, kind of dual designated guy, big and strong, big and fast. Being able to do 99 tackles on your own, that's an impressive feat. So I think he's going to be able to bring that to the NFL.
Definitely. Well, my number one is Mr. Jamin Davis, linebacker from Kentucky, on the Washington. I guess they're still the football team at this moment. So, dude ran a 4.3. He's known for his coverage skills. If you looked at Kentucky and you watch them, not play basketball, actually try to play football, they're usually not a very good team. This is the one exception. This dude was the reason that Kentucky could be semi-competitive on defense. This guy, honestly, like comparisons from both the pro experts and even just my own eye, very Darius Leonard. Like, the dude's quick. He covered Kyle Pitts in college like to a T on design plays for Kyle Pitts. So I mean, he's got, like we said, that ability to play in the pass, but he's also known for his ability to create turnovers, force a lot of fumbles, stuff the run, fills an immediate need on Washington's basically all SEC defense at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think he's just gonna hop right in there. I see big points for him. I see him and probably Micah Parsons being the first linebackers drafted. But I think in terms of immediate effect, he's in a bit of a better position than Parsons is, just because Parsons has better competition ahead of him. But talent-wise, wise, I would put them very similar. Probably give the edge a little bit to Parsons, just because Parsons is, like you said, able to play in multiple positions on the field. Um,
Yeah, that linebacker position in this draft, I don't think it wasn't skimp, but it wasn't very strong like we were seeing in the last couple of years with Patrick Queen, Murray with the Chargers, Isaiah Simmons, who even though he didn't do much last season, he was starting to like climb in that direction. But even like with Devin Bush, Devin White, it was a very strong linebacker class. I think they're like this class, these players have a lot of the technical ability, but I don't think the necessarily the freak of natureness is kind of with them, that just that inherent.
Yeah, that this draft, kind of like what you said, it seemed to be like there was generational players for offense, but not so much for defense.
Mhm.
There were good players on defense, but no one worth a top 5 pick, which but I think that this draft, just in terms of our fantasy league, I think it's going to be wide receiver heavy. I think in terms of our league, it's actually going to be a little bit more quarterback heavy than we're used to. And I think that it's going to be running back light, tight ends kind of light. I mean, I think Pitts is going to be a very interesting variable to follow in our draft, because
I'd be surprised if he goes in the first, though. Honestly,
there's a case for him at 1-4. Well, I mean, Nick has so many tight ends, but if it was a team other than Nick, how often do you get a chance to get a Kelsey, a Waller, a Kittle?
yeah,
I mean, and this is about as I can't tell you when a tight end like this will be out in the draft again.
yeah. I mean, I'm saying, do you take that chance in the first with him against some of these bigger wide receivers that we're seeing? Because I know Rondale Moore is probably lower on some people's list than what I have him as. So I'm saying, are some of these teams like the Nick, the Cody? I'm not sure who's before me at 1-6. I think it might be Dan. So I'm saying, are they taking a chance on a tight end at that number, while potentially missing out on some of these Moores, Elijah Moore? I mean, even someone like maybe Tutu Atwell with the Chargers, like the potential for a receiver to have a somewhat better than mediocre season, or like, would you rather have that or a tight end have a stellar season? Like, what would you do in this kind of draft? Like, it's interesting to see, the Pitts factor when it comes to this first round draft. I think, it's going to be wide receiver heavy. I can't see any of these teams taking the risk on Pitts that early, and that's just my 2 cents about it.
No, and that's fair. I just think that if they're like, I don't think that there is going to be a tight end that's going to have a first round grade if it's not Pitts.
Yeah,
So I think whenever you look at teams in the first round, they're technically there because they have needs that aren't necessarily tight ends. Tight ends, whenever you're looking at the priority of like where points come from in our teams, tight ends actually kind of rank kind of low.
yeah,
A lot of it in terms of the waiver wire, it's probably easier to get a tight end than any other offense position.
yeah,
But you have teams like, Dan's, who he has a pretty stacked receiving core now, especially adding Ridley and Hopkins. His tight ends are always decent, and he's a Falcons fan. So do you take a chance on Pitts just because he's, someone who you're going to root for anyway?
Mhm.
That's something in fantasy that I like to consider too. I want to win, number one, but I also would like my team to be guys that I don't necessarily hate.
Yeah,
So there's that, but like, the problem is once one position starts thinning out, I think people are going to just hop on it.
yeah,
I think a large part of it will also play into where the running backs are drafted. I think that running backs are usually a high perceived need for a lot of teams. And in this draft, there's probably only 3 that are going to see any kind of viable playing time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, if Pitts falls to the second, I feel like that's just a huge, huge steal.
Almost at any point, yeah, in the second, yeah.
But I can also see it happening. I mean, the way that I'm mocking the draft now, I have running backs going early, but I still have Pitts. I had him going like 8 to whoever was picking there.
There's a good chance for it, but I just with it being so wide receiver heavy, I think at this point, most of our league would take those wide receivers, those early wide receivers, and not miss out on that. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think the wide receivers are the safer bet. I
Yeah.
think that Jamar Chase is kind of an entity in himself in the sense that he's a surefire top 3 pick.
Yeah,
And then you start getting a little bit into the more where you can debate a little bit more. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how some people actually view these receivers if they go against the consensus that they see online. And like for me, like if I was picking at 1-4, it would be really hard for me to pass up Devontae Smith.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas some people would pick other players, but and then quarterbacks. That's something also that to think about with the draft is okay. You're picking in the second round, and there might be guys like Zach Wilson, maybe even Justin Fields, Trey Lance, that have kind of fallen here. Even like a Mac Jones. It's like, all right, do I want to get like the 4th or 5th string receiver, or do I want to wait a year?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think that more people are figuring out it's a smarter move to wait a year because chances are that guy will be on the waivers at some point anyway. But now this draft is interesting too with 2 new members in the league who seem to have a better idea, of the direction they want their team to go in. It'll be fun.
Yeah. I think it'll definitely be a more interesting draft, and I'm excited for it, honestly. And I hope we can get some more members of the league to make their own podcasts and posts because, I mean, these are just 2 people's opinions about their top 3 players they want to see on offense and defense. So I want to see what everybody else is thinking. Not so much for draft strategy. I just want to know, how our league thinks about the upcoming draft and how they value players. And I mean, not so much just for how I want to use that information to draft this year. And so it's just fun to debate, like you said, like who needs what when and when to take some of these stronger skill position players, whether it's better to draft them now or whether it's better to take a Pitts at the 1-5, 1-6 and miss out on a potential wide receiver 2 potential solid flex player.
Right. And yeah, that's why it's funny whenever it's almost hard to get people's mocks because they don't want to give up like their thought process. But it's not like I would never use information that I got from someone to alter my draft strategy because it's my team. It's how I'm building it. Like if I know that you're picking in front of me and I know you're going to pick someone, like the fuck am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't change anything. It's all about having these conversations. And I do want to see more podcasts in the league from other people, not to get the inside scoop, but it's just going to be fun, like to see all these different guys who, you see attachments kind of growing, like between Brendan and, Trevor. That love story is not over,
Yeah.
Him and Watson is not over. Like I like seeing stuff like that. And I'm also not afraid to say who I want because it's not really a surprise because they're all good players. We all see the consensus rankings, the list and everything,
Yeah, we all have access to Reddit. We all
Yeah.
have access to, I mean, just analyst analysis. So yeah, I just want to see. Rondale Moore is on my list because I've been watching him for 2 years, and now that he's in the NFL, I want to see how he does there. So yeah, this is a fresh call out to everybody in the league. Make your own podcast. Y'all get together and make some podcasts. It's about anything. But anyways, we'll cut it out pretty quick with the sleepers. I'll go ahead. My offensive sleeper, it's Kenneth Gainwell. I don't think he's really a sleeper. Everybody knows who he is, but I think he definitely hurt himself sitting out last season. Now he's going to be behind Miles Sanders, and he has to prove that he's better than Boston Scott, which I think that he is. But I think he might be a good handcuff, and I think Sanders is going to take the brunt of the beating through Philadelphia's run game. So I think he's somebody to watch. I wouldn't spend a draft pick on him, but I think he's somebody to watch moving forward. I don't think he's going to be that bell cow carrier, but I think he's a good handcuff. And I think if you have the ability to pick him up on the waivers after he's established he's better than Boston Scott, he's worth picking up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an instance where he's a better real life player than fantasy player. But yeah, I was big on him coming in pre-draft. I was surprised to see him fall so low, but like you said, size will probably prevent him from being a 3-down back. Yeah. But he's someone who I'm personally targeting like super late in the draft, just because I have Sanders, just want that handcuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, my sleeper is Amon-Ra St. Brown, a receiver for the Lions out of USC. Dude's like a 4-year starter, if I remember correctly. He plays all over the field. Scouts say that he's very competitive, very, very tough. I think that he's going to be asked to play in the slot a lot. I see him and Goff having a similar connection that Goff and Kupp had. The Lions receiving corps is like you couldn't make one worse on Madden if you tried. He's going to walk in and compete for snaps right away. I think the Lions are going to be beaten a lot this year. So they will be throwing the ball a lot. Just by default, I see this guy being an immediate contributor. He's going to fall in our draft. I'm trying to target him in the late second. But as training camp goes on, I see more hype surrounding him, at least in my theory. So I can see him being like a mid-second to someone. Probably
I think
slide to the first.
Yeah, he's definitely a good sleeper. I think I saw on Reddit after he fell out of the second round, didn't he? In real life, he was pretty late. I think I saw that after he fell out of the second round, he went outside and started working out. So I think he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder. Probably, like Goff would have after being traded to Detroit. So I think, that connection is going to be there, and I think he's going to be playing on with a chip on his shoulder. So that's definitely a good wide receiver sleeper in this draft.
And another sleeper that I'll go ahead and throw out real fast is Brevin Kim, tight end for the Texans. He was actually kind of highly touted coming in pre-draft, fell real far. I want to say he was a 5th-round selection by the Texans. They lost Fells. I believe that they lost Adkins too. Brevin Kim is known for his receiving. So I think that he's going to come and compete for snaps right away. I don't think that the Texans have an alpha wide receiver corps in general right now. Mm-hmm. I think Cooks is serviceable at best, but Nico Collins being another rookie who I'm not exactly huge on. He opted out, so of course you're missing a whole year of tape. And also Michigan's quarterback play doesn't let any receiver thrive. So those two question marks out wide. I think that he's going to be asked to do a lot in the middle, and I think that could be a pretty good waiver wire pickup towards the end. It's up to him if he can develop, but those are probably two sleepers.
That's another good one. I mean, I feel like any tight end that isn't Fairbairn or Pitts, pretty good sleeper. But I guess my sleeper for defense, Jason Away. He went to the Ravens. I like him just because defensive end. I think if I remember correctly, he didn't have any sacks in 2020, which at the end, that's not a very good sign. But he had like 16 solo tackles or 4 tackles for loss. not crazy numbers, but to me, he was a gymnast when he was a kid, and he's really light on his feet. Uh, so I think he's good at getting off blocks, and he has the potential to develop. Not going to come in and make a huge impact like game one or even the first season, but I think he's somebody to watch in this kind of defensive light draft this year. So he's a sleeper I got my eye on, and it's primarily because he did competitive gymnastics when he was a preteen. I think that's going to be like a defining factor in the way he's able to break off blocks in the future.
Hell yeah. Um, I guess my sleeper for defense would just be, I mean, he's not a sleeper in the draft by any means, but Patrick Surtain, the cornerback for the Broncos. He might be a guy drafted in the 5th round in our draft, but he'll be like an AJ Terrell kind of last year. He'll hop from team to team, filling in for bye weeks. People will drop him as needed, but I see the Broncos themselves as a much better team than what they were a year ago. I think, them getting Cortland Sutton back, adding a bit more to the offense and addressing some of the problems they had. And they're also kind of in a pass heavy conference. So I can see him getting a lot of points. I see like the Broncos being competitive. So no team will necessarily have to run the ball out just to milk the clock. So, I think he'll be one of those guys, like I said, who's just on and off different people's teams, but a serviceable player.
Yeah, I'd say that's a solid assessment. Well, I appreciate your time. I hope we get more podcasts from the rest of the league. Um, I want to hear what everybody else is thinking about the draft picks, where they may potentially pick up somebody they want, where somebody may fall. But I think it's a good start to the 2021 draft analysis.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Until next time, it's your boy, Cameron Cashin.
Johnny Mo 004. Hit me up on AIM.
Oh, God. Y'all be good.